Hey guys, Courtney from CD Exotics here. Welcome back to my channel. And if you are new here, make sure you go down below, hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about if you should buy babies or adults when you're looking to get into breeding and what my preference is. Alright guys, so I know there's a lot of things going around on Facebook all the time. People are always asking, should I buy babies? Should I buy adults? And kind of no one really knows pros and cons. I wanted to go over what I feel like pros and cons are of buying babies versus buying adults, and kind of what my preference is and the reason why that's my preference. So if you see me looking over here, it's because I have all of my bullet points written on a board over here. So if you see me constantly looking over here, that's what I'm doing. I'm just checking my bullet points. But I kind of wanted to start with babies and kind of the pros and cons of buying babies. One of the pros to buying a baby is that you get to watch them grow. You see what they look like as a baby, and you get to learn, their personality, their feeding habits. Just you get to learn about them, and then if they're sick, something like that, like you recognize that because they're not acting normal, and you need to look into it. Another pro to buying babies is that you know what they've eaten basically their whole life. You know that they are being fed appropriately. There are some breeders that maintenance feed. I do not maintenance feed here, but I know some breeders do, and that's how you end up getting some of these, babies that are, they're like a year old. They should be much bigger than they are, and they're still really small because, people just kind of keep maintenance feeding them. So sometimes it's not best to buy an older animal like that because they could still be the size of a hatchling because they've been maintenance fed. So at least, I prefer to get animals in as soon as possible, if I purchase it, rather than have someone hold it or something like that, because I know I'm going to be feeding it what I want it to eat in the amounts that I want it to eat. You also know as a baby that the animal hasn't been power fed, because that is not good either. You could get an adult that's been power fed, and you could have issues, lifespan issues, other issues like that because of power feeding. Another pro to buying babies is the price. Breeding size animals cost exponentially more than a baby will. So price, if you're looking to get the best deal you can to, I don't want to say spend the least amount of money, but if you're trying to do things on a budget, babies is a good choice because they are much cheaper, probably 4 to 5 times cheaper depending on the morph, for a baby. Space is also a pro for babies. Obviously they do grow and they will need to be bumped up, but if you're just getting started and you don't have tons of space, you don't have a whole building to dedicate to, or a room in your house to keep all your reptiles, babies take up much less space than the bigger racks for the bigger females. And also, if, this one applies more to people that are newer to the hobby, but you kind of learn about the species before you jump right into breeding. Once you've kept some reptiles, it's not as big a deal, but if you're like brand new into reptiles, you've never owned a reptile, I don't recommend going and buying, a breeding pair or trio and immediately start breeding. You need to learn about the animals, how to take care of the animals before you're trying to breed them. So I think that's pretty much all the pros I had for babies. Some cons. I don't have many cons for babies, but one of the big cons is you have to wait. It takes time. It takes bare minimum really 2 years before you can breed a female. Some of them are even 3 years. I know some people wait even longer. Most of mine, I have some 2019s that will be ready this season. They're already, like 1,400 grams, I think. They probably are. I haven't weighed them in a little bit. They were like almost 1,300 when I weighed them a little bit ago. So, but waiting is definitely, you gotta have patience, and not all of us have patience. I did say that you should start with babies if you're newer to the hobby, but at the same time, babies are much more fragile. Not the ball pythons are all that fragile, but a baby can go downhill a lot quicker than an adult if you are not following proper husbandry. So, you definitely want to keep an eye on that and make sure that you are checking up on your babies, and make sure your husbandry is on point, because babies, an adult could go months in poor conditions, whereas a baby is not going to last that long in poor conditions. But those are the only cons I really had for buying babies over adults. Adults, some pros, obviously, is that they're ready right away. There's no waiting, which is nice, for all those instant gratification people out there. They're also a lot hardier. Like I just talked about how babies are fragile. Adults are much hardier. They can go much longer without eating. It's not unusual for an adult to go months without eating. Obviously, if they are going that long, you do want to make sure you're checking your husbandry and making sure that it's not something that you're causing for them not to eat, because I know everyone says ball pythons are picky. Mine all eat pretty well. I do have one or two that will fast a bit, but usually it's males. Usually females, I find, don't fast like that unless something else is going on. So some cons of buying adults is, like I said, space. That was a pro for the babies. It's a con for the adults. This rack is quite a bit bigger than, a little shoebox rack, or even, like the FB5 tubs. This rack takes up a lot of space. The adults need quite a bit more space. Price. We said babies were cheaper. A breeding size, ready to go female is going to cost you a pretty penny. It doesn't matter what morph it is. And if it's a really nice morph, it's going to cost you quite a few pretty pennies. The price is vastly different. So that's where you have to weigh, you're saving yourself 2 years. So is that additional cost worth 2 years of your time? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Another huge con of buying an adult versus a baby is, and I'm not saying this is always true, because it is not, but a lot of times someone selling an adult breeder female is selling her because it's either she's not a great producer, she's not a great eater, she gives you a lot of slugs, and not everyone is like that. Sometimes people are just upgrading, and that just happens to be their least, the snake they have with the least morphs. Sometimes that is the case. Sometimes you do get lucky. I have bought some breeder females, and I've gotten lucky on some, and I've gotten another one that's slugged out 2 years in a row on me, and another one that this is the second year in a row she has not gone for me, even though she's like 3,500 grams, and, there's zero reason for her not to go, and it appears that she's not going again this year. So, that's definitely, a huge thing. Even people that, they limit their collection and they're selling females because they've upgraded something. typically you're not going to pick an amazing producing female to sell. You're going to pick the one, you know, if you had 3 het pied females and you only have space for 2, and one of them gives you 10 eggs every year, one of you gives 9 eggs every year, and another one's giving you 5 every other year, which one would you get rid of? I mean, that's kind of where it's at. I mean, if you're just starting out, and if you're just trying to get your feet wet and get started, you know, go ahead and pick it up. I mean, I said, it's, you know, especially if you breed your own rats, it really isn't costing you much of anything to have them. Obviously, it's costing you some, but it's when you're purchasing rats that you definitely have to think about how many slots you have, because that adds up quite a bit. But breeding your own rats, it's not as bad. So those were the cons of adults. So that's pros and cons of everything. So now I want to talk about what my personal preference is. I hate waiting. I really do like buying adult females, but I can buy a single gene adult female, or I can buy probably a 4-gene baby. So most of what I've been picking up lately has been babies, just because I know that in 2 to 3 years, I'm going to have some really nice breeders. Whereas, you know, I have bought a couple. I mean, you've seen lately, I have bought, I think, 2 breeder-sized females, just trying to get me a few more clutches for next year. And in the beginning, I bought someone's collection. I bought like 5 or 6 breeder-sized females. That is kind of what got me going pretty quickly. But I would definitely say that my preference is to buy babies, because you know, you never know what you're going to get. I mean, you could still get something that produces poorly, that you've raised all the way up from a baby, but I feel like the chance of that is less than buying an adult breeder that someone else has already proven out, and now, you know, they've gotten rid of it, and it's probably for a reason. So babies would be my preference, although my absolute preference, I would say, would be subadults. You know, something in like the 1,000-gram range that you can still, you know, still have some time to kind of learn about them, learn their personality before they're big enough to breed, but you're cutting about a year off of your waiting time. They are a little bit more pricey, but you're saving a year, so usually I can justify that. And they're not proven, so they're not being, you know, no one's getting rid of them because of, you know, production. Usually it's just someone has too many holdbacks, and that's just the one that happened to be getting rid of. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, if you guys prefer babies or adults. Maybe you think I'm totally wrong, and, you know, adults all the way. I don't know. But, as I said, like this video, share, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment, and I will see you guys next time.